So this next video, I'm going to talk a little bit about sorting in Excel, and there's a couple different ways to do that. The first way is to add the filter button or the filter drop down to each of your columns. So if you're probably starting over here on the Home tab, but if you switch over to the Data tab, you'll notice a button called Filter. So if I click on that, you're going to notice that a drop-down list is going to appear for each of my columns. And unfortunately, the way that my video screenshot recorder works, you can't actually see when I click on the drop-down what it looks like. So you'd have to, if you're on an Excel sheet of your own, you'll see the options and you'll probably be able to figure it out. But what I'm looking at when I click on this, first, it shows an option to sort from A to Z or Z to A. It also shows me some check boxes where I can pick which categories I'd like to show and which ones I don't. So for this one, it's a little bit boring because they're all fails and passes. However, this variable over here called result has quite a few category options. So the way the Bechdel test works for a movie is there's 3 different criteria. The first is that the movie has to have at least 2 women in it. Secondly, those 2 women have to talk to each other at some point in the movie. And third, those 2 women need to talk about something besides men in the movie. So depending on the movie, somebody went through and gave each of these movies a different result. So dubious would mean that like the result is debatable, or there's some question marks to deciding exactly what it passes or doesn't pass. No women would mean that it doesn't have at least 2 women in the movie. So ironically, Gravity is Sandra Bullock's the leading role, but she's actually the only woman in the movie, which is kind of ironic. So it doesn't pass the Bechdel test as it is. And then these other movies, so maybe there's women, but they don't talk to each other. I think this one means that there are at least 2 women who talk to each other, but they only talk to each other about men if they do. And then finally, there's results that will be somewhere. There should be an okay. Oh, because I forgot it's already sorted like this. So these movies all got the okay, which means that they passed all 3 criteria. So what I'd like to do, just for fun, I'm going to use the filter button to only look at movies that have a dubious result. So I'm going to uncheck all of the other categories, which again, you probably can't see in the video, but I'm going to leave only dubious selected here and click OK. And now all these other movies are going to be hidden from view. So I can very quickly see which movies the raters were having a difficult time making a decision on. Some other things, I can also use this button for sorting, but you might as well use the sort button because it adds a few more options, which I'll show you. So again, you probably won't be able to see this pop-up window, but when you're working in Excel for your assignment, you'll see what I mean. But there's a pop-up window where I can sort by multiple different variables. So first, maybe I want to select and sort by year. So then I would say that I want to sort by year, and then I can choose if I want to do smallest to largest or largest to smallest. But in this window, I can also add extra levels or extra variables. So there's a button called Add Level, where I can say, okay, but after sorting by year, then also sort the movies by something like domestic gross. So then all the movies that had the same year, the sorting will be decided by this next variable that I choose to sort by. So I'm going to sort secondly by domestic gross, and this one I'm going to do largest to smallest. I'll go ahead and do year largest to smallest as well, so it's in order from newest to oldest in that way. And then when I select those options, I'll get something like this. Oh, and I need to undo my filtering over here, so I'm going to put everything back there. Okay, and so now you'll notice that number 1, it's sorted by year, and then within the year, it's going to be sorted by domestic gross. And then once I get out of 2013, it starts over again, and then I go from biggest to smallest again with domestic gross. So sorting is helpful if you're just kind of looking at your data before doing any analysis, before bringing it into R. You can just kind of see quickly what you have and casually observe, informally observe some of the results that you have before deciding how you want to analyze your data and what kind of graphs you want to make. And then the last thing that I'm going to show you in this video is adding a column. So if I right click on a column, there's a few different formatting options that come up, but one of them says insert. And by clicking insert, it allows me to insert another column. So I'm going to insert a column here because what I'd like to do is I'd like to turn all of these fails and passes into ones and zeros. Because when I get into R, that opens up some options and it will make it a little bit easier to do a couple things if I have a column of ones and zeros instead of fails and passes. I can still use this as it's written, but there are some special analyses where you would need to have ones and zeros instead. So I'm going to call this other column pass underscore value, and I'm going to use a 0 whenever the movie failed, and I'm going to use a 1 whenever the movie passed. So the first thing that I want to do, I could do this a few different ways, but I'll do it kind of the simplest way. I'm going to make sure that my movies are sorted completely from fail to pass because I'm not sure that they completely were before. And then I'm going to enter zeros for all the ones that have a fail. But instead of manually entering 0 every single time, I can actually just click once and then click this little box that appears over here in the corner, and I can drag zeros all the way down across all of the cells that fail. And I won't go all the way down because it will take some time. But if you're doing this, you could do that, and then once you get to the last fail in the first pass, then you would stop, and then you would do the same thing, taking a 1 and then dragging the box all the way down and putting ones next to all of the past movies. And that way you had this nice extra column that you could use of ones and zeros that will make your analysis a little bit easier to do in R in certain situations.